So before we start off here, let's just be honest, Carrie. Let's be honest, okay? I think we owe it to our listeners to tell them the truth, not hide anything. Some good people, right? Listen to this show. I, for one, want to respect their integrity. Just tell them the truth. You good with that?
I'm a little afraid, but carry on.
We really don't like our reviews on this podcast. We looked at the reviews before this episode, and on some platforms it's good, and on some platforms it's not good. And then we realized we never actually asked anybody to leave a review of the show. So here's the ask. Go on your favorite podcast, well, wherever you're listening to this, really, Apple, Spotify, etc. Leave us a rating review. Feel free to be honest. It helps more people discover the show. It boosts our egos, and bigger egos produce better podcast content. I think that's the thing, right, Carrie?
Seems to be. It really does.
No, all jokes aside. Now, we realize we've never actually asked anybody to leave a review. So here's the ask. Go leave a review, and we will be forever grateful. Please and thank you. Cool? All right. Now let's hammer people really, really hard for doing the wrong things in their business as a thank you for leaving us a review.
That's why they come here. Maybe that's why the reviews.
Oh, right.
Yes.
That's why our reviews suck, because we tell the truth. You know what? I can live with. Okay. Today I want to hammer you on a really big idea. Really kind of, I think, pervasive challenge problem in the consulting space. And for lack of a better term, I'm going to call this the generalist trap. That is, too many consultants are walking around trying to be all things to all people, trying to cater to as many different target markets as possible, trying to solve as many problems as they possibly can, and doing so with the best of intentions, thinking that, well, if I can cast as wide of a net as possible, then I'm going to attract more business. That's the logic, that's the thinking. But the consequences of this are tragic for your business. And I'll tell you a personal story to kick this off. So after leaving Ernst & Young and before starting Boutique Growth, I ran marketing and business development for a boutique consulting firm. And there were some things that we did right, and there were some things that we did terribly wrong. Among the group of the latter things we did terribly wrong was we tried to be within our target market. We tried to be all things to all people. We had a fairly broad target market, which is better than having no target market. But within that scope, if we were talking to somebody that was remotely in our target market and they said, well, can you guys do this? We go, absolutely. Well, what about, can you do X? Sure. Can you do Y? Did it yesterday. Can you do Z? Don't see why not. And it was almost comical. We'd walk out of meetings and we'd look at each other and go, how are we going to do X now? Have we done Y before? Do we have a consultant who can do Z? Like, we would literally just make up engagements and start to pull resources and consultants and contractors who could do those things on the back of just a off-the-cuff statement from a prospective client in the meeting. I wonder if you guys can do this. They weren't even necessarily serious, and we would just go and start to organize around delivering on that thing. And what happened was, after a while, we'd done some really interesting projects, but our portfolio was like a dog's breakfast of stuff. It was just, there was no thread to it. There was no theme to it. There was nothing that bound it together. You could look back at what we did and you would not be able to identify what these folks are actually particularly skilled at or good at or capable at. It was random projects for random people. Guess how that fermented?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're generally talking about people who are highly capable, right? Highly competent. They've probably done a lot of things throughout their career, in their life. They've developed a lot of skills. And so, you're telling the more dramatic version, which is we figured it out as we went. But there's also the version which is actually we do know how to do all these things, right? I am a committed generalist and I can help you in 80% of the challenges that your business has. And, there may be a time for that really early on because you need to get some checks in your hand, and that's fine. But I think the real thing here is recognizing what does that mean when you are trying to articulate to somebody, whether that is face to face or whether that is, through whatever you're putting out into the world, that you have a particular niche that you are, the best at, right? The right person, the expert, the superhero who can come in and really, really do that thing. And I want to talk about it from a delivery perspective in a moment, but from a marketing perspective, let's not confuse people, right? That's really what this is all about. How do you connect not just with the people that you want to work with, but how do you connect with them about the particular problem that they want to solve? And if you're out there talking about the 14 things that you've done in the last 6 months, that's not a connection that you're going to make effectively.
And I think there's this perception that, let's use your number of 14. Okay, well, listen, once I know which of the 14 things that they want to work on, then by all means, I'm going to go all in on that thing. And there's this idea that they'll perceive you how you want them to perceive you. Once I dial in on the one thing, then it's like they'll just forget about the other 13 and pretend that you weren't trying to claim to be able to do all those things. And they'll just dial in on the one, and you'll be able to engage them on that level, and everything's amazing. And what that neglects is the perception the market has of a generalist. The market does not perceive generalists and specialists in the same way. The market will assign judgments on a generalist and judgments on a specialist. So I'll give you an example, and hopefully a relatable one. Well, actually, hopefully not a relatable one, but one that likely is relatable. When my father had triple bypass surgery 10 some odd years ago, the conversation started off with our general physician. Right? They ran some tests and they found that there's reason here to be concerned about his cardiovascular health. And we were referred to whom? A cardiologist. Okay. And I remember being in the room with the general physician, and we're talking about this, that, and the other, and risk factors and why we should take a look. And there was this unease, in everyone's mind, myself, my father, et cetera, my mother, around like, okay, well, thanks, doc. You've done your job. Now get us to the real person who's going to solve this problem, because we all know that you're just making a recommendation, and beyond that, you're out of your league. You're not a cardiologist. You're not the surgeon. You're not the person that's going to be doing anything meaningfully to solve this problem. So with all due respect, when can we get that referral? When can you get us in with a specialist? Because we knew that the doctor's, has his limits, the general physician. And I also remember the conversation that we had with a surgeon, probably a week or 2 weeks before the actual surgery, who was, ultimately the specialist that was going to do the work. And, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, a little bit, intense, if you will. But also we felt a high degree of safety, because this was the person who was going to be doing the procedure. And they spoke about it, explained the work, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, how common it is. Although it was a big deal, made us feel like we were in good hands. And I promise you, your clients, they think about you in one of those two fashions. Either they think of you as somebody who is, potentially good at a lot of things, but still a generalist. And so you might be a pretty good, generic problem solver, even if that's within a certain scope that they could throw at different problems. And maybe that's fine. or they see you as somebody who is highly specialized in doing one or two or a very finite number of very specific things. And the thing I want to impress upon you is, clients who are looking for the convenient choice, the easy choice, the we already know somebody kind of choice. Yeah, they might hire a generalist, but they don't pay them the same fee they pay a specialist. And as a general rule, clients who are serious about getting results, they don't waste their time with generalists. They want to hire the specialist. And I think if I look at, my own experience hiring consultants, that's 100% true. If I feel like you're out of your league here, I feel like this is like what I'm hiring you for is one of many things that you could do. I am not wasting my time with a generalist who will get me mediocre results. I want the best.
Yeah, and we use this doctor metaphor often, but I think for really good reason, because it honestly goes beyond just the split between the generalist and the specialist. It's also about the the tone, the state of mind that you bring to the conversation, and that your specialist is going to say, "Okay, yes, I'm going to tell you everything about this heart situation," but if you ask me about your sprained ankle, maybe I can give you a cursory little piece of advice, like put some ice on it, but I'm going to say, no. That's not what I spend every waking hour paying attention to, right? And so there's really something about, showing up in those conversations in a way that really, I was going to say indicates this, but it's not a manipulative tactic, right? It's really showing what you do, right? Really showing what you're interested in, really showing what you pay attention to. You probably don't think of it as a big deal, but the fact that you are out there, doing the reps, reading the research, learning all the new things, this is what ensures that you continue to remain relevant and valuable. And so, yes, we want people to see you that way, but we also want you to see you that way. And that's really what is at the front end of all this, is recognizing where you are an expert, recognizing where you are the specialist, and then doing all the things that a specialist does. And not, most folks step out of that. I mean, some people are just generally generalists because they like to learn a lot of things and do a lot of things, and that's fair. But if you've come this far and you are creating a business around a particular solution, it's because you have a belief in, a passion for, an interest in something, right? And this is the opportunity to ensure that you are delivering that value to people, and of course then being rewarded in the way that you built the business to be rewarded.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that some people are genuinely generalists in the sense of they prefer to be doing very different types of work for very different types of clients, and to not narrow their focus in any meaningful way. And I've met my fair share of these folks, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. What I will say is acknowledge that you're making a choice here. If your choice is, no, I want to be a generalist, I want to work with any type of client that I find interesting. And these are typically people with a very high need to be creative, right? Anything I find interesting, any type of client, any type of problem, anything that really gets my juices flowing, that's what I want to do. I have no problem with that. Just know that that is not marketable at all. There's no way to build a marketing strategy around that. So you better have a fantastic network that acknowledges and you got to be a bit of a, dare I say the word genius. Like, you got to be intellectually up there to be able to sustain that kind of a business, because the context switching is a real challenge, right? But if you're there and you have a really strong network of people that acknowledge and defer to your intellectual prowess, and they know they have a really thorny problem, they can give it to you and you'll solve it, and you can make a good living doing that, and your network is sufficient to feed the business, I don't have a problem with that. I think the practical reality is, for most people, even if you do prefer it that way, the fact that does not enable any kind of meaningful marketing strategy is a material problem for you, because you can't sustain the business.
And I think what we find often is a hesitancy to step into that space, right? A hesitancy to choose the specialization if I have more than one opportunity to do so. This is a place where people who have, been single-mindedly focused on something for years and years and years have an advantage because they don't see the other things, right? They can grab onto it. They inherently see the value and off they go. And so the other thing I want to say here is also recognize that the decision you make, the specialty you choose, and the way you present it and communicate it isn't the last decision about that you'll ever make. And I think we should talk about this probably in a separate episode as well, but it doesn't mean that you can't tweak it, right? It doesn't mean that you can't make adjustments. It doesn't mean that once you've done 4 of those kinds of engagements and realize, wait a minute, there's only 60% of that I really enjoyed and really felt like I, brought everything to the table for. It doesn't mean you can't then adjust to focus on that 60%. And so the other message I want to make sure that folks have is that it's not that you have to make a permanent decision today, but you do need to make a decision, right? You need to decide what specialist you are, right? What kind of specialist you are, and give people the opportunity to know when they see you, whether they're talking to you personally, whether they're seeing you put out content, whether someone's referring you to them. You need them to be able to see how they connect to you. And again, if a year from now you need to adjust that, you're going to adjust it. But the biggest mistake is not doing it at all.
And here's my big challenge to folks that come forward with this objection. And it ultimately comes down to, well, by narrowing my focus and claiming to be a specialist, I feel like I'm going to be limiting my opportunities or turning away business in some shape or form. That's the real objection here, however you choose to frame it. And here's my challenge to that. Let's say, for example, I'm just going to make something up. Let's say that you are considering pursuing the supporting the credit union market with their customer experience. That's an actual client example. That's just on the top of my head right now. Hi, Charlene, if you're listening. And let's say that's the market you want to go into. Okay, ideally, but you have this fear. Am I turning away opportunity? What if people come to me from outside of the credit union market, and am I no longer be relevant to them? Will they not hire me? You have this fear. The question I ask people is, and let's say your revenue goal is $500,000. Question I ask people is, if I gave you $500,000 worth of credit union customer experience clients right now, today, would you still want to be a generalist? Like, would you have a problem with this? And the answer is invariably no. Like, if that's the path you want to go down, and I gave you a full roster of clients and projects that would enable you to hit your revenue goals today, 9 out of 10 of you, I think, would be perfectly satisfied with that arrangement. So then it's not really that you want to be doing different types of work for different types of clients. That's not really the problem here. The problem is you don't believe that if you go all in on a focus, that you can generate a sufficient amount of business within that focus. Because if you believe that you could, you would do it and wouldn't have a problem with it. And the problem with that is, until you've actually gone all in and pursued that business, how can you conclude that you can't do it? And it's not possible.